Welcome to another episode of The Elevator, an Elevate AAPI podcast where we share advice, stories, opportunities, and ways to enhance your experience at IVC and beyond. My name is Charlize Knoll.
I'm James Aranda.
I'm Elle.
I'm Eddie Tiang.
And this week's episode, we talk about the elections, human connection, and how the online algorithms and media is changing the conversation.
Yeah, there you go. That's always helpful.
Yeah, I still have all this stuff saved for when I was working the poll.
Hey.
Oh yeah, that's right. You worked the poll, right? Where did you do that at?
It was a call center with my dad. So
Nice.
my dad did training for most of the people. He would be a call center for it's like tech support kind of thing. Like, oh hey, our machine's down, so they'll probably send someone to help them remotely. Or worst comes to worst, they would send someone to go see what's going on.
When
Is
did
working the poll the colloquial term for that? 'Cause-
I don't know.
okay. Because I think you're getting what I'm putting down.
Yeah, I know. Elle, that's hilarious. Sorry. I don't know if we want that on the episode, but
No,
at least for us, I think that's.
Yeah, that's why I didn't say it. I just,
Yeah.
you know.
I got what you mean now.
Yeah.
You're smelling what I'm stepping in.
James, can you explain how you and your father decided? Like, have you worked elections before, or was this? Yeah, explain the process. I'm just curious. And
So the
thank
first
you.
time, first time I worked at the polls was in high school. So it was for extra credit for my AP government class,
Oh, cool.
but he also gave extra credit for voting. And at the time,
Okay.
I was old enough to vote.
Oh, good.
So yeah, I was 18 by the time I graduated high school, and the election was coming up back in 2016. So I had the opportunity to vote and work at the polls, which was a great opportunity. What I mostly did when I first volunteered was I just told people where to go, like wait in line. I had made sure people had like their security envelopes, and that was about it. This election, all I did was work. I manned the phone, so like when people were asking for like where's my nearest voting location,
Voting
whether
center,
that
right?
where the local like ballot box, like mail-in ballot box, they could drop it off, like our hours, and like it was pretty easy. The one at IVC, I remember I had to drive there one time just because they had a question for it, but pretty much working out of the call center was pretty wouldn't say easy, but it's nonchalant. It does get busy at some times, but overall, it was a really fun experience. I would really recommend people working at the polls. Reason being, like, you get that feeling of, hey, you're doing your due diligence, especially with being able to work at like a government position, like doing something like meaningful.
Nice. So I'm just curious. Did you have any particular like story or an experience that you could share after working the polls for like the last couple of elections? Anything that kind of stuck out? I'm like, here's a story I want to share when you were working. I'm just curious.
Got any drama? Got any dirt?
Overall, no, it's everything ran pretty smooth. I didn't really have like those crazy stories that like I usually could tell. But overall, like nothing really went like weird or out of the blue. Some cool things that happened. I saw my brother's track coach. He was also working at the polls, which I thought was pretty cool. Like I get this, some people, like I get to see people who don't really I usually don't really get to interact with. So I got to talk to him. So it turns out he goes to my church. Like in reality, I actually knew him a lot longer than I personally know him. He was what's it called? He's been like one of the teachers at my local church, and apparently he was my teacher, and I never even noticed.
So say, hey, that's my brother's teacher, and then I was actually your teacher too. So that was the exchange.
Yes.
Ooh.
So I was like, so I got to interact with that. I thought that's like my only, I guess, pretty cool experience. But overall, nothing's been really out of the blue.
Mm-hmm.
I know my younger cousin, she's in high school. She was working at the voting center in LA. So for me, I felt like a sense of pride in that. I was really excited for her to be able to do something like this.
Yeah.
Especially at a younger age than I was.
Mm-hmm. That's good. It's really good. Know that
That's adorable.
Other younger folks or other folks that want to be involved are being involved and want to do certain things. So that's great.
I was just gonna add on that a little thing, like as you're talking about the younger group, that like more people, I guess 17 or younger, are like getting really involved. At least for me personally, I see in social media people just maybe they're 12 or 10 posting on their like stories that like, hey, you voting? And it's very interesting because it then like it makes me wonder that as these elections keep going on about, I guess, like when it comes to voting, smart, like being more researched and well prepared when going into the voting process, I guess. I don't know, going like I don't know the term for it. I just like being more involved politically. And I guess I was gonna ask, like, what are your thoughts on that? Personally, for me, with a younger brother, my family will be able to talk about political ideas, and I think about how that's important for him when in the next election he'll be able to vote as well. So that was just kind of like, that was just a thought I had, because I thought that's pretty interesting that with social media and everything, people are getting more engaged, but there are many flaws to that as well. And that's like kind of being shaped by recent events that we've seen. So yeah, that was my thought.
I just wanted to add on to that, Charlize, about the younger generation. I find it kind of funny, very coincidental, because my younger brother, he's not into politics, but a lot of people he follows on on his Instagram and Snapchat, he sees it all the time. That the younger generation, like people, he's a sophomore in high school, but he sees people people in his grade being very politically active, having an opinion, telling people to turn out to vote. I thought that was pretty cool. Like, because when I could say this, because when I was a sophomore, I didn't really care.
Yeah.
Like I didn't really have. It's not like I didn't care. It's more I didn't have an opinion. Like I wasn't knowledgeable about this. So to me, it wasn't like I couldn't vote. I didn't have the knowledge for it. Why does this affect me? But when I took government, I was like, this really does affect me, and I have the power to vote, and showing that my vote can matter, and like every vote does matter, even though it's like you think you're one person can make a difference. You could tell people, because you turn out voting, it's not just yourself. You could convince maybe your brother, your uncle, someone you know to vote, and those votes could add up, 1 to 2 to how many. You know, it's not just, it starts at 1, but it could grow.
Yeah, definitely. The attitude. I was gonna I'll add on to that the attitude towards what it really means to vote and the power. I feel like that's definitely changed. I will say the same. Until I took government class senior year, I really didn't care about it, but I understood that the stigma of that your voice is only like one out of millions can really influence a group of people, like a majority of certain states or certain counties that really can change the results. And people don't realize that when they think like themselves personally that, oh, my vote doesn't matter, who else is thinking that? Who else is feeling the same way? And why are you in that group of people feeling that way? Because if that's a pattern, then that shows that like your voice does matter, because once you start changing your attitude, or like, you know, when you're able to help people, I guess, see what it really means to vote, that can change a lot of people's voices. That can make them like realize that my voice does really matter. And that's the shift. That's the shift. I feel like that's been happening this election, that a lot of people are seeing through social media and through their peers, that my voice does matter because things are happening. And that if I don't say anything, that then I guess things will change. That, I mean, things will happen without your voice being put into it. And that is an issue, I think, that people are realizing. So yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah.
Well, unfortunately, I don't really have a lot of like younger cousins or siblings to go off of, but I know that for myself, I was very politically passionate, I think at a younger age, or at least not that young, but like in middle school, I started to become more interested in politics. And that was mostly because of my own sexual identity, because I had definitely had fears and questioning up until elementary school, what with the drama with sharing both halves of a friendship necklace with two different girls and then trying to win them back, and literally doing short of going up to their window with a boombox playing love songs to their window, trying to make up for it. And then like through middle school, I realized, oh, that's because I'm attracted to girls as well as guys, or just as much as guys, which was a huge thing. And that's also when I started learning about different gender identities, because I also consider myself to be very androgynous. And because of that's what made, and because of the internet and social media, that is what made me aware of who I was. Because like in my own home, like it was never, my parents never discussed politics at all. And it was never discussed within my family, which I think is a good thing and a bad thing, because it's bad because we didn't talk about it. But I think it's good that they didn't try to force their political opinions on me, because like this year, like when we decided to vote, we went to the dinner table, we were able to talk about it, and I was able to disagree with them pretty freely, and they weren't like going to judge me for it, and they weren't going to kick me out or anything. And the same with my sexual identity. I'm very fortunate that my parents are very accepting of me and my gender identity, because not every kid gets that. And I think because of social media, people are able to see that other people who are marginalized in a way that's similar to you, or is weird in a way compared to you, that they exist out there, and that you have the ability to be happy and the ability to have a good life, even if it's going against societal norms, is really powerful. And I think that's a big reason why younger people are being more active too, because through the internet, you're just able to, it's harder for people to be sheltered. It's harder for people to be totally blind of the horrors of the world, because you can see it right on your screen on Twitter. And I think because of that, there's more empathy happening, and there's more chances for people to become emotionally invested in things that even they don't relate to. And I think that's a very important thing that's been happening the last few years for me, and I know for a lot of younger people, because without learning about it through social media, then, because like if you're living like a pleasured life, you know, living in Irvine or being middle class and being a kid, you probably don't know about those things that are happening to other people. But the social media, it's kind of, you can't miss it.
Thanks for sharing, Al. You know, and I think there's a lot to be said here, because, you know, your generation, you know, I don't even know what you are, your generation app or something. I forget what the terms are.
I think I don't know.
I don't know what. Yeah, well, I'm X from
Okay.
75
You're
to
X?
like 85. Yes, I'm Generation X. Yeah, that's us, and a good chunk of your instructors are Generation X. But when I think about y'all, or at least the ones that are coming up, definitely past millennials, and so forget the exact term. We can look it up later. But the one thing that I got from listening to you all is that the need for connection, the need for interaction, and the need to kind of share and connect with others. And while we're isolated even more so because of the pandemic, right? We're looking for different ways to connect with others, especially whether it's things that you can find happiness in and find a relatable topic to connect to, or to just engage with other human beings and other people. But then when you add the contentious nature of our world, contentious nature of our politics, COVID, the murder of George Floyd, to all the other different types of social injustices that have been happening out there to a variety of folks, whether it's through class, through race, through sex, gender identity, etc. We're at that state of we're looking to find a level of calmness or a level of balance, and I personally believe, as a communication studies instructor, that that type of balance or that type of understanding, that type of engagement need to happen through communication. And if we're not willing to listen, and we're not willing to kind of hear what other people have to say, and to kind of be empathetic and look at views and look at perspectives and ideas through other people's eyes, then we can't grow as humans. We can't grow as a community. We can't grow as people, right? I hate to say it, right? As much as folks are trying to find balance and comfort, we learn when we feel uncomfortable, right? And because of that, when disagreement comes in or contentious issues are thrown at us, and algorithms, of course, are doing their manipulation. Don't get me started on social, on that side of social media, right? You can't help but recognize that, sometimes we have to engage one another, and doing it intentionally, whether it's through even just a form of the podcast of this, and doing so because we want to connect with people and interact with folks. It's a start, and I'm not sure if you're seeing it, but things are opening up more, so it seems, on a regular basis. I think folks on the local level are a little bit more willing to interact with other folks on a face-to-face, mass-to-mass, 6 feet social distancing type of interaction, as opposed to what it used to be a few months ago. But again, that's to find balance and comfort in connecting with others, because when we hear someone share their narratives and their stories, and we can accept and empathize with their particular point of view, it comes to better understanding and better dialogue to actually engage in discussions where we can find a consensus or find a better argument or find a better solution to whatever it is. And just because of this is for audio purposes, we call that argumentative love in my Calm One class, right? And that's the notion of engaging and recognizing one another as a rhetorical lover. And when we engage in argumentative love, we're open to be persuaded by superior arguments, right? I mean, granted, people can agree to disagree, but if I'm coming at you wanting to engage in argumentative love, looking at you for your intrinsic value versus your instrumental value, I'm going to want to hear what you have to say, But if people aren't willing to engage, then that's when contentious folks remain contentious, and we still have the divisions that we are kind of seeing today.
So really hard. to do that.
Cool. So were there any surprises or like, oh my goodness, in terms of like the election? I know votes are still being counted, folks. We know that. But anything like pop out for y'all?
I mean, since I was watching it, sorry, I'm gonna bring this closer. Since I was watching it with my family, the reactions from them kind of made what happened the day after the end of the election a surprise, when things were still being counted, how things were slowly turning one way to another. But I mean, besides that, this is the first time I think my family as a whole has been engaged in the election, while last term we were all engaged for, I guess, similar reasons to this election. I feel like maybe because of quarantine as well, through voting, because my mom and me actually had a little conversation about what it means to vote, like use your ballot, since I already submitted mine earlier on, enough so where when I send the mail, it will definitely reach there 15 days before. But when she did it, she wanted to have these conversations with people and like have her ballot right there as she was talking and asking my dad and me what we thought about it. And I said, why would you do that? Because, I was worried that she'd be influenced by us, and therefore it'd just be a kind of like a copy and paste of maybe my opinion or my dad's opinion. But she said in these conversations, not only help her, but see the different sides of what a proposition may mean versus what it is on the paper. Because while the paper says a certain pro or con, or a website will say a certain pro or con, how I see as a pro or con may significantly open up a certain, I guess, thought for her, like may open up certain areas that the websites or papers couldn't do. So I thought that was a surprising point within my family. And that's why I was going to open up the conversation as well into when you talked about social media, how things like the algorithm and people's perceptions these days being a little more polarized prevent people from getting to see different sides, what they want, what, they consider right now to be wrong or to be not agreeing with their side. And that's kind of scary, because then people, I guess, being able to tell others that, no, I'm not going to listen to the other side. No, they're this with this person, or they represent this. I'm not going to listen. It's kind of scary, because then with people unwilling to listen to each other, especially with social media kind of agreeing with them, like towards their sides. Oh yeah, like I like these things, therefore the system will give me more of what I like. It makes it harder to see the different sides and how, I guess, what is truly a majority or minority of a certain thought, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. That was kind of what I was thinking of, but that's the thing. Those are the things that surprised me.
Yeah. I want to say that your conversation that you had with your mom is similar to what I had with the whole family. Although we were more I think we voted together before on local elections, so we are more familiar. We have more of a process where we are very much trying to vote, or at least we're very much discussing it, collaboratively. Like we read it, we read what's on the ballot descriptions together. We look up stuff online as we're like thinking about it, and like everyone will explain like the parts that they know about and like how it applies to them, and like questions and things like that. So I think that's I'm not as worried about for our family copying each other's vote or anything like that, especially not my parents, because both of my parents, it's very hard to influence them unless you make a very good argument, which I'm able to do sometimes. But basically, not worried about conforming. But yeah, the thing about the algorithm is really interesting, especially on it depends on different social medias. But I think it's definitely an issue that the way the algorithms on social media work, especially on the ones that are run by Google, is that they track what your preferences are, whether it's like, commercial items like cosmetics and things like cosmetics or like fandoms or whatever your interests are, and they will promote it to you, and that also includes political interests. And it's just a way to get you to buy into the advertisements they put out. That's essentially it. They just want you to keep watching so that you'll be more inundated by advertisements if you just keep watching more videos which have multiple ad bites or whatever they're called in each video. So it's mostly because of that. It's weird because, well, I kind of think it's funny because I think perhaps my ads for my YouTube account is not as targeted as it should be, because I think I don't know what the exact setting was, but I think I intentionally turned on a setting where it didn't like give me preferential ads. And I think it's doing it by region. And so lately I've been inundated with Trump ads and ads for really conservative channels, like in general, because channels can promote themselves by buying advertisements from YouTube. So like it'll literally be a clip from their personal channel. And this doesn't have to be like a big, you could be a really tiny, like 5 subscriber channel and do it. And it's funny to me because I'm watching these videos on gay rights and then suddenly something that's like completely the opposite comes up, like PragerU or something like that.
Real quick thing before James and Charlize add. I think you should watch Bill Maher, because let's totally what you just said is like, I think you would probably appreciate his comments
Okay.
and his criticism on the Democratic Party. So I'll leave it at that. James, Charlize, anybody?
So pretty much they were talking about like the presidents, right? When what they've been doing, and that so the main candidates are Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And so they were talking about President Trump and his methods versus that Joe Biden doesn't really stick out. And one thing I would say is that when it comes to representing certain groups, that the reality is just because you're a Republican doesn't mean you agree with all Republicans. Just because you say you're a Democrat doesn't mean you agree with all Democrats. And the issue with all this algorithm and stuff is that the conversation then is not clarified with that point, because people like really push the border between red and blue. And sometimes that then can not only influence the conversations we have with peers, but also the conversation with other topics related to politics, such as whether we should listen to someone because of their political views on other topics. Well, I think people kind of notice it, like Elle mentioned, putting the money in. That's kind of how you get your voice out here. It's the money.
Yeah.
And the investment is kind of hard. It's kind of hard to make the right investment when it comes to all this algorithm and stuff, because essentially you're going to get your voice out there if you're different, but also if you're willing to be consistent with that. So like President Trump, like I feel like he's a great example of that, because he's using Twitter and other platforms to really use his voice. Very there. And I won't keep going on because, I mean, I can't speak for him, and I can't speak for other people who also may feel the same way. So when it comes to this, I guess a scary thing is people's preferences now. And again, this is just adding on. This is not like responding to anything you said, but I think it's kind of scary then when people say they would prefer one candidate over another, then suddenly who the person is not who they are, but who they voted for. So like I say that I voted for a candidate that my friend didn't like. Sometimes the conversation then is, they assume the reason why I vote for this person is because of this thing. And that's kind of scary, because if you're telling me to not, I guess, okay, a quick example is a lot of people tell their friends that if you follow this person, unfollow me now. Yeah. Because then that means that you believe in blank and blank blank. But that's kind of scary. It's scary, especially for the younger generation, to say that, because that's putting it out there that they know you voted for this person because of blank, 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 rather than let me hear you out. Because I think it's better to know what you disagree with, the reasons why people choose something you disagree with, because by doing so, that will lessen miscommunication, misunderstandings, but as well reveal to people that there are some things people prefer, that you can't decide. And even if you think it's wrong, saying that you believe one thing is wrong doesn't exactly make it right. It doesn't make things better. Wow. I don't know how we're like, I don't know how much I can keep when editing this tonight, but yeah, that's kind of, I think there's some points
I think it's
that
pretty
like,
bipartisan, though. I mean, this is very.
no, yeah, I definitely like, that's why I kept saying one person or the other person. Like, it's just, that's how we kind of see it though.
Yeah.
By we, I'm not going to say every single person. There's definitely going to be people who are like, but I don't believe that way. Sure you don't. But like, it's kind of hard. See, the thing is, I don't believe there's no exception, but the exceptions aren't the majority. The majority of the conversation is the highlight of what we see all the time. And that will influence you whether or not you want it to, because most people are having that conversation that it's red versus blue, one person versus another. Yeah. And it seems like some people are trying to say, like, let's focus on unity. But a lot of people don't want that. A lot of people believe that if one person is doing the wrong, then let's just focus on the right rather than try to reestablish what is right, what can be better, and what can we do about it. So we can have those conversations rather than have arguments that are, I guess, going nowhere. So, yeah, that's what I think. James,
you have words because I have several, and I am, you know how I am. So,
So for me,
and tax returns, Pete.
so going back on what Charlize is saying, how you shouldn't just focus on red or blue, or it's not one or the other. For me, the way I vote is I have my own opinions. Yes. For me, I'm a very, I would say I have a lot of conservative views, but I also have a lot of democratic views as well. Like I would vote depending on what views I align with or I agree with. On some points, I agree with Democratic Party, where a lot of things for me make sense. There are some things that I don't know how to put this. I don't want to say I grew up in a very conservative like house, but a lot of my views growing up were very conservative, and that's where I align my views because that's how I was raised. But growing up like in certain areas, a lot of my friends and a lot of my influences were from very I remember in middle school taking American history. A lot of my classmates' views were very liberal views, and then growing up here in like Tustin, a lot of my friends had very conservative views. So being able to take my influences and what other people are trying to influence on me is very, very different from what other people are telling me versus what I'm trying to, I don't know how to put it, but I try to weigh my opinion with what I want when I go vote. I don't think about how other people influence me because it's not their vote. It's you voting. I have a story kind of to go with this. My sister, she texted me right before she was about to vote on how how I viewed on certain propositions and how should she vote for it. I straight up told her, before you go, research it. I didn't give her a straight answer. And then she called me saying, why didn't you give me a straight answer? I'm like, it's because it's not me who's voting. It's your vote. It should be your opinion. That's the point of this. It's to be able to voice out what you believe is right for this country. You shouldn't have to listen to all the marketing, what other people tell you. And then going back off what Charlie said, how some people are like, I have a friend who is very conservative. He's we grew up together. He was one of the friends that I actually thought that I would go into the ministry or the church with. The church has very conservative views. I remember him telling me the other day, like I think it was like Tuesday or something, like election day. He was telling me, "Hey, you should vote like for this candidate because he, this and this, and if you don't vote for him, you're going against this and this, like against the church."
Mm-hmm.
But and he's like, I remember him saying, "We can't be friends anymore if you believe this and this."
Oh wow!
I confronted him because we've been friends for a long time, and I know his views. I told him, "Did you really just tell me we can't be friends because of you believe this and this?" And then, he was really upset about that. And then the next day, he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry about what I said." I'm like, and then we got into a discussion about it. Like, I forgave him, but I'm like, that's how a lot of people are becoming, especially with the younger generation. And I see that a lot with my brother's on his Instagram, like with his friends, when I was telling you about how the younger generation's like posting about, "Hey, you should go out and vote." But a lot of them were very negative, like, "How could you vote for blah blah blah?" It's very like, it's either you listen to what I believe is right, and you're wrong. There's no other side to it. And I feel like that's where a lot of people are heading towards, and it's not, it's not right, but it's just not. If you're not able to listen to both sides of an argument or what someone else has to say, why is it an opinion? An opinion, or to me, what an opinion is like being able to formulate your own opinion based on being able to hear both sides of a story. It's not just one-sided.
This topic is hard for me.
Yeah.
Because I struggled with this kind of thing a long time. And I think, especially online, I think the word or the key word would be cancel culture. The idea of, cancel culture can refer to canceling, deciding to ignore or no longer endorse and possibly denounce a person. Sorry, someone pressed the door. I didn't know if someone was trying to come in. All right. So cancel culture is the idea of especially on the internet, of stopping, not endorsing, and denouncing a person because of their actions, ideas, or political views. And I really got into that kind of culture when I was in middle school and things like that, because I was my entry into political activism was through social media, through like Tumblr and Instagram and things like that. And a lot of it was mostly denouncing individuals, like not even political leaders or anything like that, but like other private blogs and things like that. And also I honestly was very aggressive and like way too aggressive towards my family when it came to certain political views that were in a way that was unfair to them. Part of it, I think, was fear that they would be, because they didn't really talk about what they viewed politically. Sometimes I think I overestimated perhaps how much they were invested in them. And I was basically preemptively assuming that they would be conservative because I was really scared of them not being able to accept me or like my friends or anything like that. Like I was preemptively like, especially since there's so many stories of people who are like kicked out because their parents don't agree with their identity or who they're with, kind of thing. And I didn't know anybody else really for a while who was also that way. So it led me to be more aggressive. But I was able to work things out with my family by being able to understand. The hardest thing to do is to like be able to see. It's really hard to be able to sympathize and like really put yourself in the shoes of someone who's opposite of you. And And a lot of the time for my parents, luckily, it was mostly misunderstanding. And a lot of their defensiveness usually came from the fact that they felt like ashamed that they had gotten something wrong and didn't want to feel ashamed. Like about things about pronouns, especially for other people. And they would really hate it when I corrected them on using pronouns on people that I hadn't met or we didn't know. Things like that really got them upset. Things like that. But we've been able to work it out. But like the hardest things for me, like the really hard things for me are in real life when I interact with people who don't, I think it's something important that sometimes political differences is like, you don't like that I exist. And that could be really difficult in a lot of ways. But I've been able to lately, I've been able to be able to emphasize with think about what that person probably has in traditional values, and I talk to them about what their values are and why are they so scared of something that seems irrational to you. And even though it's irrational to you, it's not. It might be totally reasonable to them based on their beliefs, based on their logic. It makes sense to them why they'd be scared. And so it's hard, and sometimes it doesn't feel fair, but that's a really important part of being able to have an honest discussion with someone. Last year, I was really proud of this. I was able to have a conversation with a woman who said that she doesn't think that gay people, and she said gay people, but she really meant gay men, should be allowed to adopt children. And I don't know why, but I think it was just because it was in writing one with Professor Kiana, who introduced me to Elevate. Hey. And this might have been one of the reasons why he introduced me to it. Actually, no, that was after. But basically this woman who was a non-traditional student, she was probably in her 40s or something like that, who was an immigrant from, I don't know where, I don't remember. But she, I had been pretty active in discussions in class and things like that, especially regarding immigration and American culture, especially with consumerism and things like that. And so she approached me before class started and asked me why are gay men allowed to be married? And why is it okay in America? Why are they so accepting of it? And I was like, oh, well, what are the issues that you have with it? And she's like, oh, cause the gay people will, turn children into perverts, or they'll try to get them to become gay and things like that. And I was like, well, that a lot of gay people are raised in straight-headed households. And despite any kind of, and there's several scientific studies that show that no matter what kind of intervention you try to do to change someone's sexuality, you really can't, even when they want to. Mm-hmm. So that wouldn't really be possible. And two, because gay people have been told so much to change, they're the least likely kind of people who would want to force their child into a certain sexuality in that way. And we kept going on for a while, and it even got to points where she seemed to think that she was like, there's so many gay people there, that's why there's so many adult diapers in stores, in supermarkets. She's like, big shelves of adult diapers in the supermarket. I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, yeah, it's because of the gay people. And I was like, and then I wasn't able to understand it, and then it occurred to me, wait, she's talking about gay men, so she's probably thinking about anal sex. And I was like, does she think that the frequency of anal sex is the reason why there are a need for adult diapers and why there's so many? Because before I even got to that point, I was like, well, they have adult diapers because there's a lot of people here, and older people tend to have bowel issues. And she's like, no, it's because of the gay men. And I was like, and so I actually confirmed her. I was like, wait, do you think that anal sex is the reason why they have adult diapers are needed? Because that's not how anal sex works. And I was about to talk about the mechanics of it. She's like, no. I don't want to hear about that. I'm like, but you wanted to know why? You wanted to know I affected your bowels. But I mean, that's kind of unrelated. That's one of the notable parts of the conversation. But basically, by the end, I was able to like convince her like homosexuality is more natural than you think. Like, it's not just a phenomenon that's happened in the modern age. There are over 500 species in the animal kingdom that have naturally practice homosexuality in different ways in the animal kingdom. So it's not even a human thing. And that's what got her to be like, oh, okay, I'll look that up. And that I would not have been able to have that conversation at all in middle school. I would have been screaming. I would have been yelling. I would have walked away and like called her names and everything. But in that moment, I was able to, that conversation was the first conversation I was really able to like have a calm, civil conversation. Like I had a smile on my face and everything, especially for the diapers part. But, yeah, it's so difficult to have a conversation when some of the differences is the difference between, you existing or people existing or not existing. Mm-hmm. So, but that is something that it does need to happen. That's the thing, because like, if you don't have the conversation, then they'll never know. But I mean, I do think it's also important maybe for people who aren't in marginalized groups to be able to advocate for them as well, because a lot of the burden is put on marginalized groups, especially there's been a lot of discussion, especially in like the Black Lives community, where like Black people are forced to be advocates of themselves and be the spokespeople and be, which was not a bad thing. You should obviously listen to people in marginalized groups who are talking about their issues, but to like constantly have like your new random Black coworker become like the ambassador for all Black people for you is not cool. To expect that of any random person that you meet just because they're in a minority group. But and also to like expect like over sympathy, I would say, because sometimes some people are entitled enough to be like to be offended if they end up getting someone else offended back, which is a problem. But I don't know. It's a lot of things. Also, there's this podcast called Conversations with People Who Hate Me. And it was created by this he's a gay Muslim comedian, and he literally goes through his social medias and finds mean really terrible comments about him and contacts them, and has a whole podcast talking to them on the phone about why they said the things. And some of them are terrible, like some brutal, like you are a faggot that deserves to go to hell, and like you deserve to choke on a Glock and things like that. Like he'll try to talk to like the most threatening, horrible comments. But usually in the conversations, it actually ends up being like shockingly civil. And I think a lot of people don't realize a lot of the passionate comments and harassment that comes online is mostly lip service. Like it really shows that like, obviously you should be cautious about things like that, but it's shocking how many of these conversations end up being like, oh, well, I didn't really understand this concept, and you seem actually like a really nice guy, so now I'm kind of rethinking my whole paradigm of what kind of a person you are and your demographic and things like that. And also, I was kind of upset about another thing, and I think I was insecure about something, and so that's why I said those things. And that's really refreshing to see. So like, you've both sides have to try. That's the thing. It can't just be one-sided. It does help it might take initiation from one to the other, but you gotta, I don't know, it's hard. I don't know.
That was good. No, that was good. That was great. I feel like that was near the end, that was definitely a good summary of like what we're trying to just put out there, that there are multiple sides to a conversation. And so with the elections and with recent events going on, and just social people using online presence and social media has definitely highlighted that people can be very polarized when it comes to ideas, and not being able to understand different spectrums of what it means to be right and wrong definitely can be very scary and can have very damaging effects to just who we are and like how we live day to day. So yeah, that was good. I liked what you said.
I don't I don't know what to add on to what's been discussed so far, because it's kind of hard to talk about this kind of stuff because I don't really have those kind of experiences like Elle has, being able to talk very openly about this, because like for me, my family, it's my first time for my sister to vote. My mom doesn't vote, so she doesn't really have an opinion on any of this. My dad was only started voting around when I think like 2008, so it's what, 2 elections ago. So for me to have an opinion and be able to discuss topics like deep topics like L, it's kind of tough for me, especially when it comes to politics and such like this, since for me I didn't really start learning about it till like 8th grade, and I didn't get into it as depth till I was like, what, a junior or senior in high school. So for me, my experience of like having formal opinions about this kind of stuff started pretty much going into college, and my opinions have shifted so much within the last 3-4 years of the last election, where formulating my own opinion has pretty much changed from when I voted 4 years ago in the last election. And voting for, looking back at some of the propositions that were brought up, some of them I've seen come back from the last ballot, and I could clearly say that my position on some of these propositions have changed from 4 years ago when I first voted.
Yeah. that sounds, I mean, yeah, I'm gonna just quickly add on that. I think for me, it's not that I didn't have a strong opinion, nor did I not care. It's just within my family dynamic back then, the conversation of politics and very strong opinions was, I guess, a taboo to have these type of conversations, because I don't know, it's just when we overrepresent certain ideas into who we are as a person. I think that was the fear I had back then, that if I had a certain belief and shared it, that's what my parents would see me as, rather than the kid they've always seen me as. And that was a lot with friends too. A lot of friends I have are very strong and opinionated, which I didn't mind. I felt like that showed a lot of courage. But the downside with that is, once they shared those opinions, that if it so happens I disagreed with them, then how can I put that out? How can I share that with, I guess, with enough honesty to continue the conversation, rather than misinterpret what I said and assume I'm just outright disagreeing. So, but that applies to a lot of things, especially with the elections. And I guess from there, I would say that learning to have the conversation in general with people, with peers, especially loved ones that may believe and see you a certain way when you may not, you may not be all that. And that's with people in general. Putting yourself out there and being honest is a struggle. But, I'm seeing that people these days have been trying to put out very strong points, very strong opinions. And whether that's good and bad is one question. But I think whether or not it's allowing people to open up more than before, I think is another direction people could look at through. So, yeah, that's what I think.
Charlize, if I could just kind of like bring into, I guess my thoughts or comments regarding all these things. Again, just reaffirms the notion of engaging in conversations and be willing to be empathetic and to be other oriented and to see things outside of just one person's point of view. And when it's solipsism, and that's the belief or saying certain things that you already agree or already like side with, that you're only going to be seeking those to reaffirm what you're believing and what you're thinking, right? And so when someone else offers an alternative point of view, a different perspective, another argument, right, into the fold, unfortunately, some folks will like treat that as like ammunition, treat it as like resistance, treat it as like, oh, you're the other now. And that's when, unfortunately, relationships and certain perspectives can come into play, and that relationship can be tarnished. It's unfortunate, but if we could at least look to the fact that we can come to a conversation that we agree to disagree, okay, but in order for us to agree to disagree, we need to agree on what that topic is. And so when people sidestep and move the topic from one goalpost to the next goalpost or farther down, and we can't kind of stand on our own like 2 feet and stand on what we believe, then we can't have true dialogue. We can't have come to an understanding or engage, as what I said earlier, in argumentative love, when we can't look at the other person for their intrinsic value. When we look at them as a means to an end, we're not going to see them as other human beings or a fellow brother, fellow sister, fellow human. Instead, they become a person to quote conquer or quote out argue, and then becomes a zero sum and us them dichotomy. So again, the more we talk, the more we connect. I think we're in a better place. I know in general, folks need to connect with others, but I can only imagine what students must feel like, especially in the pandemic and in the space that where we are. But I'm very appreciative that at least we can have open conversations and dialogue about these things.
The Elevator is produced by Elevate, an AAPI student advocacy program where our staffs and student mentors help IVC students reach to their fullest potential. For more insight and ways to help get involved, visit our social media handles at Elevate AAPI at IVC. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next episode.